Okay, so today we are going to be doing some earth bending. So to get things started, we need to do the actual earth flying up without our actor pretending to move it. So to do that, we need an area for it to happen. So we're going to build all of the terrain and the rocks inside of Maya. And then we're going to animate it and export it into After Effects, where we can key out some green screen footage and put an actor in there. So to get started with this, I'm just going to create a new plane, and I'm going to grab the scale tool. I'm going to scale it to probably the size of my grid around. Then we can hide the grid up here, and we have some nice floor. But we want to make it a bit more interesting, so I'm going to go into my channel box, and then I'm going to go into subdivisions, and I'm just going to change this to 30 and 30. So now you can see we've got loads and loads of vertices we can work with. So if we hold right click and we click vertex, we can select a single corner, but if we grab our move tool, we can add some texture by doing that, but that doesn't look very realistic or that good at all. So if you hit B, you go into soft select mode. And so basically what this does is if you select a vertex or more than one, it'll select them and then it'll gradually do the same thing but just less. So to demonstrate, it makes a bulge, so it's pushing the one you select at the beginning up to the max, and then bending all the other ones to around the same, like a little bit less, so it's really smooth. So we can use this to create some texture into our ground, I guess, like so. So it's quite hard to see, but it really makes a difference when you're finally done. So if we go back into object mode by holding right click, you can see we've got sort of some ground here. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to build our rock that we're going to work with. So I'm going to make a new cube, and I'm just going to move this up here, and then let's scale it up a bit, and I'm just going to use the main scaling thing, and we'll scale it a bit like that. Whoops, that's not what we want, like that. Okay, again, we're going to go into inputs and turn the subdivisions up to just 20 this time on all of them. So now we can edit it. So I'm going to go into vertex mode, and I'm still going to have soft select on, and I'm really just going to shape the cube a bit. Okay, so I played around a bit, and I have this really odd shape, and now I'm just going to scale it a bit more basically to add a bit more to it, and this is just to get a bigger boulder. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move it down towards our plane, and we're going to move it off to the edge, because what I want to do is when the boulder lifts up, I want there to be a hole in the ground underneath it to make it a bit cooler. So to do that, we're going to put it in the corner. In fact, let's just move it to around the edge there. Okay, so that's where our boulder's going to go. We're going to move it down so it's a bit more in the ground. Okay, and actually I can see here this side isn't actually very interesting, so we'll add a bit more to that. One thing that helps when you're doing this is actually to scale it up loads, because then when you go into soft select, it doesn't select as many, so it can look a bit better if I move that in, and then we can scale it back down again if we go into object mode, like so. Okay, so now we've got that there. What we want to do is create another plane just like this, and in fact I'm just going to click Control D to make another one to make things a bit easier. We want to make it so it's a sort of grid around our boulder, and I'm also going to rotate on the y-axis by 90 degrees to add some variation so it doesn't look like they're right next to each other. And then in gaps here, we can go into vertex mode, And with our soft select on, we can just merge them together a bit more. So everything looks a bit cleaner. And I'm going to turn my gamma off so it's a bit easier just to see all the like little bits. And you can see that's actually looking pretty good. So we'll do it again, clicking Control D, moving it along, move it down a bit. And we'll rotate by 270. There we go, we'll fix it up in a moment. Just do our last one. Oops. I didn't duplicate it. There we go. Now we've got duplicate. Okay, so now we've got something to work with. I'm going to rotate this to 180. But what I do want to do is, the ground still looks a bit similar, so I want to play around with this just a tiny bit to add a load more variation to it. So that things don't look too similar. We'll curve that down a bit. So there is a gap there, but that doesn't matter too much because we can go into this one in vertex mode, make that go with it, and let's go into this one here, vertex mode, select all of these and let's bring them up a load. So I've got a really kind of hilly feature. On this one we can do, we'll bring this lump down a bit, bring this up, object mode, and now we have some terrain to work with. Actually going to move this one over just a little, and you can see if we go underneath, this, when it rises out the ground, leaves a gap behind, but this gap looks a bit too perfect. So if we go into vertex mode again, we can select some of them and create some jagged edges that there might be where you'd expect to see this. Okay, so this is starting to look a bit more interesting. Oops. You can select two at a time, move them up, then move one up in the y-axis as well a bit. And the last one, let's bring them both back, and then let's bring one up and maybe even forwards a little bit more. So now we've got some real difference here. Okay, so now that we've got our hole, we can select this in object mode and move it back into the hole. And I'm also going to duplicate a few of these that aren't actually going to be used for anything at all. I'm literally just going to use these to make the scene look a bit more interesting and add some variation to the almost completely plain ground. As well as this, we can try and work out where our actor's going to go. So I know my green screen doesn't actually cover feet, so say we put my actor here, we can move this, so in the final result, if we move this out of the way, it'll be covering my actor's feet, so he can do this and it'll still look fairly realistic, which is really helpful. So you can use them to cover up like different bits. Say there's a bit that you don't want to see, but it also the perfect cut, then you probably want to use this technique. Okay. So now we have just a bit more going on in our scene, and we've worked out where we're going to place our actor. So now that's all left to do is to do the texturing. So, going to open up Hypershade, which is up here, and we've got this here. So for the ground, we're going to create a new Lambert. We're going to call this ground. Go into color, select file, which is there. Then go to folder, we're in texture, and I've just got a texture called ground, which works. And that can just be used on everything in our scene. So just right click, assign material to selection. If we close this tab for now, turn on texturing here, you can see gamma on, it looks like that, gamma off, it looks like that. So it looks pretty good. So I actually had to change my texture because I don't own it, so this is just a completely copyright-free texture that anybody can use. I can't give anybody it because it still isn't mine, but if you just search Google for dirt textures and then put it on usage rights, whatever, and make sure it's a large file because that normally works best, and that should work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly click this and just make a preview, and that's looking pretty good apart from this area over here, which probably just wants to get moved up a bit. Okay, so that's cool. So now let's get animating. I'm thinking I want 80 frames where nothing happens, so we'll just go to frame 80 and click S to set a new keyframe, and then I'll go to 120 and just simply move it up in the air, and then click S. So now we've got this, which looks pretty good. You can see it's left a gap behind here, which is what I want. So this is going to be a really simple job. You could use a texture for this, but I'm going to use just a black Lambert to show, ooh, it's dark down here. I'm sure there's something there, but you can't see it because it's so dark. So we can go into Hypershade again, very quickly, clear our workspace, create a Lambert, underground, if I can spell, color, just turn it straight to black, and then if we turn it into this mode, we might actually be able to see it. That block there, assign material to selection, done. Okay, so now, when we go to here, there is a black darkness left behind from where it was. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so now that we've got the lift animated, I'm going to go down to here and just extend it to 200 frames and select our boulder. I want it to last in the air, so I'm going to set another keyframe at 140. Then I'm going to go to 200 and I'm literally just going to fling it off the screen and then add a bit of rotation to it. Then set another keyframe and you can see got some crazy flying stuff going on. So now that we've got our boulder in place, all that's left to do now is probably lower this section here and then add a camera in. So I'm going to go to create, camera, and then camera and aim. Okay, so I'm going to select them both and just drag them over to here, drag them up a bit, select the camera, and we'll just move it around like so. Okay, so I'm going to take the aim point and I'm going to move it to the rock. And I'm going to move it to the very bottom of the rock. Doop. Right, so then we're going to move it down so we can get a slight animation up to frame 80. So we get a bit more excitement, so we'll just move it up to the top of the rock. So then we've got a camera move, just a little one, and then it's going to start flying up to frame 120. So then we want another move up, and I'm just going to leave it like that. So now we've got camera going up slightly and then up a lot more. So now we can test this by going into front, clicking panels, perspective, and then camera 1. Turn on texturing, and then we can see how this looks. And I'm actually seeing here, just zoom out, that probably wants to get moving along. Just leave it so it resets to the right place, and then let's have a look. Okay, so the camera's going up a bit, and then it goes up a lot faster, and then whee, the boulder just flies off. So that's quite cool. I can see there's a bit of a gap here, which could cause some problems. So if we lift, no, that's not going to work. Move it along, see how that looks. Yep, that looks cool. And then if we quickly render a frame, see how that's going to look. That looks really cool, and especially with a sky in the background and an actor. And I've noticed that with our camera, we didn't align it, so I'm going to put that there. So now we still have our place for our actor to go. Although I do want to move them back in Z-space, like so. Do that. Ah, I forgot, that'll move the actual camera, which we definitely don't want. And where on earth is the point? Oh god. Oops, ease. Move the boulder slightly, grab the point, move it back to the right. Well, actually, if we go to frame 1, then that should have reset it. So, will that be covering feet? Yeah, actually that looks pretty good. So now we have some terrain, the flying boulder, and then it flies off screen. So we're going to want to render this out. So if we go into our render settings, I like to use a target. We want name.number.ext. We've got 200 frames, so we'll do that. I'm not going to do a batch render because I did it off camera, so I know it works, but you might want to do that. So just render out 10 frames. Make sure you've got camera 1 selected. 1080 works quite well. And go into My Software. We want production quality. Ray tracing wants to be turned on, and so does 2D motion blur. But we're going to add even more when we start editing in After Effects. Going to click Control S in case it crashes, and then I'm just going to click Render and Batch Render. Continue, and then you can see down here rendering has started. So I will be back when that is done. Okay, so now we're going to bring everything into After Effects, and when importing the photos, all you need to do is click the first one, but make sure you click straight unmatted, otherwise it won't be as easy to do, but it's an easy fix. You just need to key out the black, which I'll show you how to do. So I'm going to take my Earthbending clip and make it into a new composition, and you can see we have this. Wait for it to go into real time, but you can see all we've got basically is just the boulder flying up and then soaring off. So it's quite a basic sort of thing. There we go, we've got all our frames loaded now, so we can play that. It's got a bit of a camera move and then a nice fly off. But because we did straight unmatted, you can see when we click alpha channel, this whole thing has an alpha. Now if you don't do that, then all you need to do is apply key light and then select the black here, and that should get rid of it pretty much easily. If you're having some trouble with the shadows, then just re-import it with straight unmatted, which is just easier anyway. So now we've got that done, we want to put the footage in. So I've got it here. Here's me on the green screen. So it starts around, I'd say, here. So I'm going to trim this, and then we'll move it to the start. And then I'm going to carefully mask around our whole green screen, like so. There we go. And we'll make sure we don't get that little taggy thing, which I forgot to cover up behind. Okay, so now we have our green screen, which is pretty easy. We're going to open up key light again and put that on a green screen, and I'm going to select quite a dark green because that's easy to work with. Then I'm going to go into my screen matte and I'm going to click screen matte as well. So basically what you want to do is you want to play around with the settings to try and get pure black and pure white where your actor is. So that actually looks quite good, but we've got quite rigid edges. So then we're going to go to screen pre-blur, just blur it a bit, and then if we go to final result, you can see that's pretty good. We're going to turn the shrink up. That's grow shrink a bit, so we get rid of the green sort of reflectiveness. But if we just play that, you can see we've got a pretty good green screen. My leg there's a bit of flickering, so if we go back to screen matte, maybe clip a bit more of the black. 75 looks good. So go back to final result again. So we don't really want to be here, so I'm going to move all over here, scale myself down, probably to there, and then we're going to transform and then just flip horizontal, and I'm going to position myself behind the boulder, and then to fully position myself, all I need to do is drag my footage underneath the earthbending, and it looks like I'm underneath it, but again, scale isn't working out, so I'm going to do a flip apparently. Just flip vertical to fix that. And maybe now that I've done that, I want it a tiny bit bigger. Okay, so if we have a look at this, we can see the camera's moving and I'm going with it. So now I'm flying with the cube, which looks a bit mucked up. So we need to track our footage. So if we go into Earthbender and then Windows, and make sure you've got Tracker with a tick next to it, and then this appears down here. Just click Track Motion and you get a tracker point like this. Now, since our camera doesn't have any rotation, we don't need to worry about rotation or scale. So I'm just going to put this on the point of this boulder because I know nothing interrupts it and it stays there for the whole scene. And it doesn't move that much, so I'll just shrink everything a bit and then click play. Okay, we're nearly there. Oops. Okay, still a bit further to go, but it's not actually moving, so we can stop. Then we'll create a new null object and we'll rename this to tracker. And then we'll edit target and select our tracker, click OK, and then click apply and make sure it's X and Y, and then click OK. I'm going to go to our first frame and I'm going to grab the whip of the actor and put it on the tracker. Now when we play our clip, okay, so that looks good, but it's a bit out of time. So to do that, we're gonna see, this is when we want to start lifting it, so we're just gonna move it along. There we go. So that is all for the boulder, but now we want to create a more interesting background. Just got a picture of the sky, just gonna put that at the very bottom, and boom. Already we've got some nice sky going on in the background, which looks quite nice. Gonna also whip this onto the tracker. And then we're gonna add our mountains in. So I've got a nice little clip of mountains here. I'm gonna put this above the sky, and it's quite small, so we're gonna scale it up and hope we don't lose too much quality. Okay. So there are our mountains. We can just place them like so. Then we want to add in key light again, and we just want to key out the sky. That's the wrong layer. Delete that off there, put it on the mountains, then we can put key light on and grab the sky. Okay, that hasn't worked very well. So we're going to screen map, and it's all a jumbled mess at the moment. Let's try and fix this a bit. It's not looking very good. Okay, so it doesn't look like this is actually going to work, so what we're going to do is we're just going to use our mask tool since it's a still image. And all we've got to do is do a rough mask around the mountains, like so, and actually I'm way off it. Move it down a bit more like so. Oops, we've started a new one. Okay, so just slowly working your way around the whole mountain, and it doesn't matter that much because the skies are similar colours, so with a bit of feathering it'll actually look probably quite good with quite a bad mask. Okay, and then we'll just go down here and we have our mountains. So we'll go into our mask properties and we'll turn up the feather. And already these mountains actually blend quite well into the scene. Maybe take our feather down, turn our feather up, turn the expansion down ever so slightly, like minus 0.1. And then add a bit more feathering. That looks quite good. And then we'll just whip that onto the tracker. And now we have this. Okay, so we can see here that the sky has actually sort of come off the clip. So this is a simple fix, we just need to move it up some more. And that's all fixed now. And just load up this so we can get a bit preview of it. There we go. So the boulder flies up and then it's flown forwards. Now the last thing to do before we preview it fully is just apply motion blur to the thing, and I'm also going to apply it to the footage and the mountain, not the sky, and that's just because we've got a camera move, so we probably want just a slight tiny little bit of blur to go with them. But that is this for the earthbending tutorial. Apart from colour grading, so you might want to add lens flare in, so just quickly, lens flare. I'm going to add optical flares in, because I like it. You could just use the normal flares, but for this I'm going to use this, and we'll put it into screen. Put it up in the corner, and option wise, something really simple just to get some nice sort of look on the scene, and you can see where the shadows are falling, so we just delete everything on this. You can see where the shadows are falling, so that's quite easy to do. Make an iris, lens orbs, and anamorphic stripes, but that's really all I want on this. So that's really simple, just nice lens flare to go with the scene, and that is it. Thanks for watching, see you next week.